Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner AFRY. AFRY is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. Today we have a new episode. We have a great storyteller. I have the pleasure to welcome Michael Stott to Urbanistica podcast. Hey, and welcome, Michael.
Thank you. It's absolutely wonderful to be here, and I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Thank you so much for giving your valuable time to record the episode, and good morning from Stockholm, Sweden.
Good afternoon from Brisbane, Australia. You are going to have a nice day today.
So how are you doing, Michael?
Yeah, I'm great. You know, I really lots of fun things going on in our country right now, and new and inspiring things happening around the world that give me a lot of joy to see. And I think my focus really this last 6 months especially, it's been about finding the silver linings in our current situation and reconnecting with people and just trying my best to find the opportunities things.
Yeah, creating a better future. So Michael, tell us about you. How would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us about your passion.
Sure. This is well, first, I hope everybody that's listening really is well and happy. And, we're all kind of globally on a different spectrum right now of kind of current pandemic, post-pandemic. There's all sorts of things going on. And I just, I feel quite lucky to be able to be sitting here talking to you today. So, when I like to introduce myself, it kind of sounds like I'm in a recovery meeting. My name is Michael, and I'm a passionate urbanist. In saying this too, of course, I suppose, given our current context, I think it's probably quite appropriate. And just generally as a professional, I'm an urban designer, a placemaker, a city strategist, and all over the world. Although, as I mentioned, we currently live in Brisbane, which is also one of my favorite cities. And here in Australia, I'm also one of the regional leaders at Placemaking Act, where we're working together with a great group of people all across the country and internationally to amplify the importance of placemaking. And what is it about me? I love cities. I love my city. I love your city. I love cities, and especially ones that are vibrant, active, full of life. And my favorite cities are actually ones that have a grit and grain that isn't overt, that isn't revealed all at once. I have a terrible sense of direction, which in our profession is not always handy, but it's because I love lost in cities. If you can't get lost in a city and find your way out and find something else to see and do, I don't think the city is a success. And so I enjoy letting myself get lost and absorbed into the kind of unique cultures and the space of each city I spend time in. And, I think that's the best way to get to know it. And I also, of course, when I introduce myself, I also am very lucky to have a really great family and with support and patience. And I say patience because I often go on tangents about urban oddities that I've kind of picked up on. And, I even more so with our children who pick up on both what me and my partner do. I love when they say something that I've, in a certain way that's kind of describing something entirely new, maybe that I haven't noticed before. And so that I love the kind of innocence of that. And so we are a family of kind of city lovers, is fair to say. Interesting and stuff. My friends and I too, when you talk about what am I passionate about, I'm a runner and I've run in cities all over the world, and we have a kind of informal running index of cities, and I can tell you that I love nothing more than going out kind of 4:30 in the morning before the city's really woken up and running the streets, running the waterfronts, really, again, absorbing myself into the city, seeing what's out there, seeing how people do things a bit differently. I've had some great runs in China, Europe, North America. I had a run just before the shutdown with Ethan Kent in Penang, which was great fun. We saw all sorts of new things that you only see when you're actually taking it from the vantage of a kind of a pedestrian or having and it's really great. And so that I would say is kind of what I'm passionate about. And beyond that, I mean, I'm passionate about all sorts of things really, but I also have quite a few fascinations. And what really fascinates me is our whole concept of cities and of the city. They're like a fascinating conundrum, right? Because on the one hand, they're one of our most kind of extraordinary inventions, and yet on the other hand, they also are actually kind of our biggest failure. And the COVID-19 pandemic has made the bluntness of this kind of reality quite clear. And whereas the dysfunction of a city pre-pandemic was seen as an inconvenience, oh, it takes ages to get through Manhattan, it takes ages, to go through central London. Toronto's a nightmare. But ironically, with COVID, although that dysfunction was seen as a kind of a disaster, what COVID's actually proven itself to be is also a profound opportunity, on the other hand, which more agile cities around the world have really discovered how to position themselves better in a world of cities. But I think more importantly, with a reinvigorated importance in the eyes and hearts of their own citizens, it's a fascinating time to be an urbanist. And like I said earlier, I'm enjoying right now every day thinking about cities in new ways and hearing how every day other people who aren't in our kind of profession think about cities and talk about cities and relate them to their friends. And yeah, it's a really interesting time to be an urbanist for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And before we start talk about after COVID City, I would love to ask you one question. When is your favorite moment? Is it when you run in the morning when the city is empty or when the city is full of people? Which one is your favorite one?
It's funny. So in China, I remember we were doing quite a few things in Wuhan a couple of years ago, ironically. And when you go out early in the morning, there's still a buzz, right? Like, because a lot of people who work in different countries around the world kind of don't do this 9 to 5 thing. They actually have a kind of a more of a 12 to 14 hour day. And when you're running in some of these cities in China, you see the dumpling makers out, you see the kind of people getting ready for their day, shopkeepers sweeping in front of their, their spaces, and it's so interesting to see along the waterfront or in the parks. You see people doing exercise. Really, you start to see the city come alive, and then as you're running and as you're exploring, it comes alive and it comes more busy. But by the same token, running in a city that's full of traffic isn't really kind of ideal in any city, even where I live here. And so I like to go early before it's too hot and crazy. And I like to see the cities come alive and how everyday urban life unfolds in front of me as I'm running through the city. And everybody always gives me a wave or a smile. Like, who's this guy, running through these crazy cities? And I derive a lot of joy from that, to be fair.
That's amazing. Like it's very interesting when you're describing like watching the city waking up, and
Yeah,
coming
absolutely.
alive. So let's talk about yeah. So you do a lot of work in the destination strategy space. I would love like to ask you what does it mean and can you explain it to our listener?
Yeah, sure. So, destination strategy means different things to different people depending on what you're trying to achieve. For me, in kind of the space that I work in, it's about creating a shared ambition for a particular place. That could be a city, it could be a precinct, or a more localized kind of plaza, something a shopping precinct. Um, and then to kind of realize that shared ambition, once you've found out what that is, you need a sort of playbook of sorts that provides actionable things and outcomes that allow you to leverage your assets, or what I like to call your best bits, to create these a series of interconnected and memorable experiences that actually together work to grow investment, job creation, cultural and lifestyle outcomes, visitation. And so a destination strategy in terms of representing the shared ambition of place is really just about how better to leverage your assets and how really to kind of realize a way of looking at things that's very specific to a particular set of issues and opportunities. So when we do work in this space, the destination strategies are actually the downstream product of our approach, which is a kind of a place-led economic development approach, which positions new economy with arts and cultural investments that capture a higher share of expenditures, or the ideal is a higher share of expenditures from local income. And so what this essentially means is that instead of elsewhere for experiences like entertainment, culture, etc., residents, workers, visitors are actively encouraged to support local talent and venues, which in turn create earnings that recirculate at a higher rate in their local economy. And so the destination strategy is the means to nurture, if you like, an economic ecosystem that is connected, innovated, grounded in the assets of local residents and businesses, and is reflective of their stories of that, grounded in the context in a very local position, but it's how that is leveraged. And we know from our experience that when people are going to cities, you can go to a city and you can see an iconic structure. Yeah, you see it once, maybe that's great, but what you're actually there to see are the people and the culture and how the streets and how the places come alive and what people do there differently. And so I know I'm not the only one that kind of immerses myself in the culture of a city. It's actually why we all go to cities and kind of have a nose around. And so destination strategies are just one of those kind of tools that we use to frame our approach to designing great places.
But Michael, like when I hear like destination strategies, like who is the target group? Are we talking about visitors or local people?
Well, I'm of the belief that you design everything for locals first. And, so destination strategy has probably been co-opted by the tourism industry to do something quite different, which is why I guess I mentioned that it means different things to different people depending on what you're trying to achieve. So if I actually said, hey, Mustafa, let's create a destinational strategy for this great place, what we're talking about is understanding what's there and creating something that showcases what's happening in the area, that's a curatable experience, that's really about bringing a place alive. And so anything can be a destination. I think what we have to do, much like there's been discussion in recent years about the over co-opting of the term placemaking, I think destination is probably another one which has been, co-opted by various different industries, as well as place branding and some other kind of keywords. There's, you and I have also Kyle's great YouTube diatribe on the co-opting of urban words and what they actually mean. And so I guess it's why I like to think of things as being creating a destinational strategy that's locally based and reflective of creating memorable experiences that resonate with the local audience first. And if that brings in visitation, that's great, but it really has to be about the local first. And in fact, if you apply a COVID lens to that, what we've seen is that local economies need to be supported without that kind of global touristic kind of view, because when that goes away, what you're left with is a city center or a cultural district or what have you, that if it isn't supported locally, it just doesn't work. So I'm all about creating things for the local and creating fun things for people to do that really amplify the value of the place they're in.
Yeah. And if we talk about the scale, are we talking how big can we apply this destination strategy space? Like, could it be a very small square or like a big area?
No, I think you can apply it at numerous scales. In fact, we're writing a strategy for a destinational strategy for a new city in Saudi Arabia right now, and that's at the city scale. I think what happens when you start to get to the kind of larger scale of destination is you have to remember that there is a hierarchy of destinations, sub-destinations, sub-experience, and things to do. There can't just be one destination in the strategy. So you can apply it at different scales. Of course, the documentation gets a little bit more complicated the bigger the project, but really it's about doing something on a sliding scale that shows you that the interstitial spaces that make up your city or make up your master plan are just as important as the kind of key anchor uses that you have spread across any development from neighborhood to precinct to new city.
Yeah, exactly. And also like you need the different spaces to build up the common story, like the big story.
Absolutely. You know, so this is interesting. Common stories and collective memory, they only happen when we have a great place, right? And so my partner Haley and I were talking the other night about this notion. She was listening to a podcast and they were talking about shared nostalgia. And I had this aha kind of moment. It was related to kind of new ways of working, but the idea that what we need to make sure we have are these spaces and things to do where you and I can go there, have a unique experience that creates this memory that 2 years from now, when I see you in person, when I go to Sweden, we go, do you remember when we went to that place and did this thing? And so then we've created this sense of memory or shared nostalgia. And that's really what placemaking should be all about.
Exactly. And you're also like, I want to ask you about this tool, like audience segmentation. You use it a lot. So what is it about?
Well, so audience segmentation is one of quite a few different tools that we have as strategists. But really what it's about is better understanding the various needs and interests of different users of a particular space or place. So it can help you understand, for example, why a certain segment or certain groups of people aren't using a particular place, but also understand those that are using it and how they're using it. So you can then kind of curate the experience, if you like, to either attract more of the audience you have or to diversify the place by attracting new audiences and knowing that the kind of things that you're designing or creating are resonating with a larger group of people. So in the case of our work, we use data from a variety of sources to capture geographic, behavioral, demographic, and psychographic attributes of potential user groups, really to help us build a strategy, or I guess a design response, if you like, that's both psychologically and emotionally resonant. We know that, I'll throw a statistic out there, I don't know if it's true, but 80% of people make decisions based on emotion. We should be designing things that are emotionally resonant. And so when we use tools like audience segmentation, what we're trying to do is avoid creating generic places for generic users without a sense of identity or purpose. That is to say that places form people and people form places. So understanding who these people are helps us to better design more responsive places with, curated experiences, shaping messages, interactions really that are relevant to each segment. And then even more, it also allows us to intentionally design nodes of convergence, which is extraordinarily important in terms of creating those collective memories where they can be made, shared, new ideas can happen in an innovation or a knowledge context. These areas of convergence are where you and I come together with two different problems. We talk about it and three different solutions. So the idea of designing public space or designing cities with nodes specifically created for convergence and divergence, to me, absolutely is exciting. And we use audience segmentation to know who we're positioning in that and maybe who's missing out.
Yeah. And do you use only data to generate like the different elements to your design, or you also do talk to people, interview them?
Yeah, we use it from a variety of sources. We obviously we use the kind of social life survey method. We use neighborlytics. So if, for example, I can use audience segmentation to understand who might or might not be using a certain place, when I actually go into that place, and whether it's through a place game, social life survey, or something else, and start really using that the power of observation, I can start to really, get to understand what's happening in that particular moment or in that space, or in fact, what's not happening in that space, and who the different groups are. So I think you need a combination of both. Sometimes it's one or the other, sometimes it's both, but really it's about having a kind of a playbook or a toolkit, if you like, that allows you to design better places that, again, resonate with people as an absolutely kind of a key objective. And so it might not be always appropriate to choose one tool or the other. And as I tell my own team and others, right, coming up through the industry, is it's great that analytics and metametrics are out there, but that's only half the story. We have to go and we have to see and observe and understand how people use space. And of course, you and I are quite similar in this regard. In our beliefs in the kind of the system of the study, the process of studying social life of public spaces, and it absolutely is transformative in terms of your view of how you look at space.
I totally agree with you, especially also like now when I work with my team, I always tell them like, don't only trust the data and the map. The reality, the people will tell you a different story. So we have to talk to people and understand. So we put together the different stories to a big and common story.
It's interesting, and so we're doing right now a housing action lab here in Queensland. And, one of the things that we talked about at our last workshop was, if you don't understand the lived experience of the audience, whether that's homelessness, whether that's just people in space, if you don't actually understand that lived experience, how can you presume to design a response to something for them? I mean, it's such a huge assumption to make. And so, I mean, it's like doing site visits by Google. You can't. You have to feel it. You have to smell it. You have to hear it. Like, you've got to use all of your senses to engage the place. So analytics and metrics are great. Like I said, it's only part of the the puzzle. And the more sources and the more ways we have to look at things, I think the more informed we become.
Yeah. Very interesting. You're highlighting a very interesting point, because using only, let's say, like the Google Maps is a really great tool. But the thing, what we want to create is experience. And the experience is not about, like beautiful images. It's like it's an experience, like feelings, you smell, you hear, you touch stuff. So this is what we create, and we can do it by visiting the site, by talking to people and so on. Like, it also experience the place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael, can you share with me, like, and with the listeners, some of your projects that you're working with?
Sure, we've been doing some really interesting stuff. One of the projects that we finished earlier in the year it's called the South Bank Master Plan here in Brisbane, which is a really amazing project. We actually had, literally 2 days before all travel was cancelled, Fred Kent and Kathy Madden were here helping us on the project. And the reason why they were here helping us on this project is because South Bank is probably one of the countries, or at least Queensland's greatest and most loved assets. And what we were trying to do, because there was an existing place, is try to come up with a way to provide reasons for the next generation to know and love this place. And so we did a lot of huge engagement, a huge amount. We did really great place games. We did all sorts of good stuff to help understand, how do you take something that's so important to people and gently let them know that you want to keep it important, but there are things that you need to do to kind of, from a master planning point of view, to create that long-term vision and project viability. And so that's been one of my favorite projects. We're also working on an interaction plan for the city of Brisbane here locally, which is less so about COVID recovery and more so about re-energizing the city centre. And so that's quite an exciting one too. We're working on quite a few projects still internationally, including a great project I'm working with our Singapore team on in Bangkok, which is about creating a new public space in a kind of outer suburb or outer ring by the airport, and what we can do to actually create something that's not been done there before. So that's been great fun. Then in the new city space in Asia as well, we're seeing a lot more interest there, and we're doing a lot more kind of speculative work. We've recently been also engaging on projects in Pakistan and elsewhere, which are really about people starting to come to the realization that now is actually the time to update their long-term visions and strategies. I guess more locally too, we're working across the country on a number of really great projects that are all kind of looking at the city through a new lens, if you like, and so that we, break it out of bed and go to work, because the stuff that we're doing right now is so interesting and engaging. And then, in addition to the kind of the major project work that we do, as you would know, I love speaking on the future of work and engaging with people globally about issues to do with cities, health and well-being, placemaking, and really bringing people together kind of globally to share our knowledge or share our understanding of what needs to be done different, and how do we kind of gain some momentum that we've kind of seen through COVID.
And you work with many different projects in many different countries. If we talk about after COVID cities, what kind of cities are we going to see? Like, is there any clear pattern?
I think so, and it's an important discussion that is happening across Europe right now, and in Australia as well. And I think people's expectations of cities are changing rapidly, and the pandemic, if anything, has accelerated people's expectations of their cities. And cities around the world, as we've seen, are facing this kind of dual challenge currently of attracting people back into the city, but also keeping people there as the anchor they need to build economic recovery and growth. So my belief is that the post-COVID new economy of our cities is absolutely going to have to be driven by people, their direct needs, their ideas, and their day-to-day experiences. And I guess the answer really too is around this idea that if not now, when? Because if we can build places that truly appeal to people and provide this range of engaging experiences, places that are resilient, beautiful, dense, walkable, mixed use, diverse, places where the goal isn't to facilitate the movement of vehicles and the delivery of goods to single destinations, places that are active day, night, visually interesting, creative, generally so awesome that people will spontaneously prefer them, then cities once again will be the rock star attraction. And I think we'll see with that changes in behavior post-COVID that brings new life and activity to our cities. And that's what's going to spur on the social and economic recovery that is better resistant not only to future shocks, but less dependent, as we were talking earlier, on perhaps global tourism. And so what are post-COVID cities going to look like? Let's say that why can't they look beyond being a commodity as a result of economic activity and shifting social groups, and more towards this intentional process of design that sees cities become not just a collection of architecture, or as Fred Kent would say, not just architectural museums, but as places that really tell our collective stories and are manifest of our greatest kind of hopes and dreams, and representative of who we are. It's really exciting. And so maybe post-COVID cities then begin to reflect themselves not within the context of the cities, but actually as a reflection of the attitudes, beliefs, and levels of satisfaction cities made, a very localized kind of a response. And so for cities to really succeed post-COVID, regardless of size or where you are in the world, I think what's becoming clear, or what's abundantly clear actually, is that cities require making bold and courageous decisions. They need to create a partnership, new forms of collaboration, and 100% they need great leadership. These aren't words that are new in this space, but again, if not now, when? We need to really champion bold and courageous decision making in cities. And I think that is absolutely where cities are going. And I think post-COVID cities, I'm a great optimist, and I think post-COVID cities will be the cities we want instead of the cities we have.
So you really believe that we are changing our behaviors, the decision makers are waking up and understanding the situation. So we are not going back to the normal. Like, we are not going to forget what we learned during the COVID about our cities.
Regardless of how short human memory is, especially in the case of natural disaster, shocks, regardless of the short-term nature of that memory, we see better things happen all the time through these things. And history, in fact, has shown us through various pandemics, wars, economic downturns, Great Depression, that we operate best as a society when we come together and create things rapidly, successfully. And so it's up to us to, yes, maintain the forward momentum, but cities most definitely not go back to normal, because I think we've already seen the acceleration of so many things in our cities that are for the betterment of cities, that to say we're going back is actually not even possible anymore. We're already forward far enough that now it's just about sustaining momentum.
Yeah. But so do you think, like, is placemaking the key to create better cities? Like the kind of city you're talking about?
Well, I mean, my entire approach to what I do for a living, and even how I look at things in my own kind of personal life, is place-based. I'm a kind of I love storytelling. I love narrative, and I love the fact that great place, people. The expression is people attract people, and great places aren't by accident. And so I think that placemaking is the kind of the basis for cities. And what I was saying earlier about cities being architectural museums, or cities being a collection of buildings or disconnected or defragmented cultural assets, not fun. And that's not really um, how cities are gonna succeed in the future, or indeed have a marker of success around, oh, I have the greatest building. It's actually through our understanding of experience and place that makes cities memorable and actually work. And there's all sorts of agglomeration kind of theories and activities that come out of that, in terms of the ability for new things to happen when we have great places, and innovation to occur. And there's been lots written on this. And I guess, for me, something that I've always understood, and it informs my approach, is that cities are full of these really rich stories waiting to be told. And for me, those stories are told through the city's places. And so when we see these stories come together, this is the rich city life. This is how cities live and breathe. And this is how cities tell the world about how and who we are. So if place isn't fundamental to that, then I actually don't know what is. And so that's really what drives my approach, is this kind of a place-led understanding, and really an appreciation of the understanding of what it both unlocks and what it represents in terms of celebrating urban life.
I'm so happy to hear that. Tell me more stories, Michael, about Australia. Like, what are the exciting things happening? Like, share with us.
Well, and this is again probably an important thread with after COVID cities, because everyone around the world is at a different stage in their kind of COVID journey, right? And so we have cities that we can learn from, and that we should share, and share our ideas with. In Australia, we've been quite lucky, although we currently are experiencing a kind of hopefully a contained outbreak in Melbourne. But I think that the Australian example that we're seeing now is that placemaking is coming alive in Australia. And I think that there is loads, honestly, loads of exciting things happening across the country at the moment, much of which builds off the momentum created by the pandemic, but really a renewed sense of momentum around how we sustain these changes over the longer term. It was yesterday we had, I'd recommend checking out the Design Jam Facebook site, because we have a recording on there from our place, Australian state place leaders roundup, I think we called it, which talks about all the different things that we're doing around the country. And I really am amazed at all the, when people were talking in our kind of group chat the other day, I was just like, oh my God, there's so much going on. It is, we have to share this knowledge. We have to get it out beyond Australia. And I think one of the, although there's been some shining lights in the smaller cities around the country, and some of the stuff they're doing, I think with respect to New South Wales in particular, I absolutely am in awe of how great the last kind of 12 to 18 months have been for them. So they had, I don't know if you're aware that it's been a year-long festival of place, which was launched last year as a celebration of all things public space across New South Wales. And it's included so many important initiatives of, if I have to count them, I'm going to forget some, but there was a public space design competition. There's been films, there's been contemporary dance in unexpected places, which has been bar none my absolute favorite. There's been summer nights place walks with artists, actors, comedians, and performers to special places in their own neighborhoods, which is awesome. They've got a new public space charter. They've got a new toolkit, regular podcasts, amazing funding for local projects. And they have a new CEO of placemaking for New South Wales. It's incredible. And if ever I had seen a government, especially in this case, lead, it is in New South Wales. And it really started when Rob Stokes was, took over his new portfolio, and it went from a planning portfolio to a place portfolio, and everything has just kind of coalesced since. And so it's honestly, Mustafa, it's been a thrill to watch it unfold. And I'm always looking at their LinkedIn and various social media and going, oh my God, another place plan? What are they doing next? And what's even better is we look across Australia, and I see other states now looking at what they've been doing, and how do we get that here? And when people, I mean, just general people, start looking at what a place is doing around placemaking, people vote, right? So if all of your voters are saying, hey, we need to talk about place, I think we've got more than a movement happening here in Australia. And I can't wait for you and your listeners, many of whom I know, come and visit us here, so I can show off our best bits. It really is. And I'm hoping with the after COVID city stuff that we're doing together with Placemaking Europe, what we're able to do is really share with the rest of the world some of the stuff we're doing here, not only as a kind of a collaboration initiative, but as a way to show hope and a way to share ideas. And we don't own these things. These are just things that have happened intentionally, but they need a broader audience, and people need to see that change can happen, and we absolutely can build back together if we celebrate each other and the kind of places that we create. I get very excited about this stuff. I know you can tell.
Wow. And also like CEO of a placemaking. This is so cool.
Well, the fact that there is such a position, first of all, is extraordinary. But the fact that the person in that position is a wonderful person is even better. And the entire place team, right now is just such an incredible talent pool, and it's incredible to be share and discuss things. Vanessa Gordon was on our place chat the other day from the government, and I I think you've got Alex Amar, who's doing absolutely the leadership is amazing. Dr. Caroline Bowden, like there's a sense of inspiration and a real palpable willingness to kind of affect change that I think is inspiring. And so I highly recommend everybody kind of a kind of social media stock or a Google stock or whatever you want to do, and just check out what they're doing, because I think a lot of what you'll see you can apply to your own cities too.
And also, you talked about very important point, like you want to show the entire world what you do in Australia, and I think this is very important because, like, usually what we have is like, let's say in Stockholm we say, oh wow, look at how people do in Spain. In Spain, people say, oh wow, we are not doing good. Look at how people do in Australia, and so on. I think especially now after COVID city, like what we're gonna do is like every city talk should be like really proud about every single project, you know, because we are contributing, like it's not that we are not doing good and in Stockholm they are doing better, or like in USA they're doing better. Like every project counts and every city is part of this.
Absolutely. And I think importantly, it's okay to love your city. It really is. And it's important. It's infectious. Probably the wrong term to use in our kind of pandemic environment. But it really is, people attract people. And when you love something, other people want to be around that. And I think it's okay to be proud of that too. Just like it's okay to ask for things to be beautiful, just like it's okay to ask for things to be fun. Our cities aren't commercial activity. They have to be about sharing our stories and connecting with each other. And I think, if anything, when it was taken away from people in terms of the kind of global lockdowns in various cities, is when people have come back, they've really realized what they've missed. And like I said, now is the time for sharing of that information. And the things that I've seen, in New York with the open source kind of parklet plan, I think it's great. NACTO was first on the scene, immediately putting out the new guide. There has been some really amazing open source initiatives that we need to all be across. And I'm hoping the after COVID city work that we're currently all contributing to is really the platform for that to happen.
Yeah, and this is like also an open call from Urbanistica podcast. Like, share whatever project you're working with. Like every project counts. It doesn't matter if you put out a chair or if you do like a destination master plan, placemaking strategy.
Yeah, I agree, and I really hope your listeners kind of pick up the challenge and start to. The Placemaking Europe kind of website, or even the Stipo website, there's a lot of really great tools and resources, but there's so much happening so quickly right now that we need to almost create a library, kind of a wiki of this information, where people can look and say, "Oh, hey, Melbourne did this for the economic recovery. Hey, I could probably apply 15 of those 45 principles to my city." Like, great. That's exactly the sharing we want.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Michael, it's very. I'm really happy to talk to you, and now we're almost in the final chapter of this story. Now I have four questions left, and the first question is gonna be: if you will be an animal, which animal will you choose and why?
Well, I have a young daughter in this house, and everything is unicorns right now. And I love that we're using the idea of unicorns to talk about a new economy. And so, you know what? I'd love to be a unicorn. Why not? Why not be the thing that nobody expects? I'm the placemaking unicorn.
That's so cool. And what are your hobbies? You told me you like to run in the early morning.
Yeah, we do a lot of art in and around the house. I think it's important to kind of be creative, and to have different outlets for your passions. So yeah, we do a lot of art. Haley is an amazing artist, and I always share on Instagram. And she breaks up the chalk on our driveway and does these crazy things. And I love spending time as a family, and we're quite lucky to live in the world's sunniest city, so we do like to spend quite a bit of time outdoors. And I like um, just chatting to people. And growing up, it's quite funny. My mom was always one of those people that would talk to everybody, even on the bus, anything, and it would always be so embarrassing. And I've become that person, like, terrible. because I'm just so interested in people's daily lives, and I really like hearing stories. And I'm an avid reader, and I've got lots of different things that I would say are hobbies and things. But really, I just you know I think creating is probably in any way, shape, or form would be the ultimate way of describing it.
Yeah. So where would you love to travel soon? To which city?
Oh well, so I have been quite lucky to have gone around our lovely country here quite a bit. But some of my favorite cities in the world, if I had to plane tomorrow, I could probably say three places. One, I'd go to Mumbai in a heartbeat. Two, I'd go to Istanbul in a heartbeat. Three, I'd go to Berlin in a heartbeat. Yeah, I could do 100 if you want. Yeah, but that's probably my top three. And I think I Istanbul is just one of those cities for me, like Mumbai. I love the frenetic energy. I love the different people everywhere and the layers. Like, cities are like onions, layers and layers and layers of culture and history. I can't wait to go back and travel again and see those kind of things, and just like I said, I'm going to turn into direction, so I can't wait to go and get lost.
I can imagine. I would love that we finish with two questions. The first one is, you give us 3 takeaway messages.
So how about I give you 1 takeaway message and your listeners turn it into 3. Maybe, for me, the pandemic kind of experience that we've had here, and seeing my family who live around places isolated, and I think what is highlighted for me is really the importance of showing empathy in all aspects of our daily lives, whether we're immediately connected or in different places around the world. So I would just love for anybody listening to us chattering now about these kind of crazy things, go away and find 3 ways you can show empathy towards other people in your daily lives, and make that your goal.
Yeah, amazing. And the last question, it will be you asking it. So ask us a question.
Yeah. I think it comes down to, what are you going to do? Are you going to be part of the movement for change or not? I think that the kind of collective momentum that we've been talking about and these great things that are happening around the world, it kind of relies on all of us and our relationship with each other. And now is the time to kind of lean in, connect with people differently, work together collaboratively, and you know what? Reimagine our cities and spaces that aren't just for the few, but for the many. So I would challenge everybody kind of listening again, just to go out there and keep the momentum going, and ask questions. If somebody says no, let's start to, how about I challenge everybody to take a yes mentality for a week.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for inspiring us. Keep up the good work and keep loving cities.
You know what, Mustafa? It's been my absolute pleasure. I do love listening to your podcast when I'm on my way to work, on my bike or on the bus, and I think what you do is important in terms of sharing stories, right? It's exactly what I love as well. And so I'm glad that you've found your voice, and I'm glad that I could be a part of it, and I look forward to seeing you in person in Sweden.
Thank you.
See you later.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. You learned something new and also got inspired by the guest. Don't forget to share the episode on your social media and recommend it to people you think they are really interested in this topic. Thank you so much again for giving your valuable time to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.